Welcome to the Time Chronicles. I'm Karen Ellington.
I'm Starfire Tor. Join us as we journey beyond the outer limits of your perception.
Beyond the illusion of mainstream reality and beyond the deception and disinformation that passes for truth.
So join us as we reveal the hidden and forbidden secrets of the world and the multiverse.
It's about time. And welcome to the first episode of the Time Chronicles, the truth about the Mandela Effect. We will be revealing on this podcast the unique insider knowledge on all topics related to time, timeline edits, time shift effect, the Mandela Effect. Get it straight from the horse's mouth here, only on this podcast, with the world-renowned, uniquely psi-gifted scientist, researcher, and media personality, Starfire Tor. So remember to subscribe if you enjoy delving into the beyond normal topics, because this will certainly be the podcast for you. So Starfire, we both know that this thing called the Mandela Effect has affected and attracted a lot of attention with a lot of people across the planet. But what people are going to learn right now on this podcast is that the Mandela Effect is actually based on your personal research, if not your life's work, really. Its real name is the time shift living dead phenomena, I believe, or what you call time shift effect. Isn't that right?
That's right, Karen.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that we're doing this as our first show, because one of the things that I have made the public aware of over the years are hoaxes, frauds, and the theft of intellectual property, no matter what a person's field is, whether it's what you call beyond normal, such as UFOs, ETs, time travel, time anomalies, space flight, space forces, whatever. When a hoaxer enters the field and starts to make up stories about a particular topic, particularly like these topics that I just mentioned, they do almost irreparable damage to what is a very truthful topic and field. There are UFOs. There are extraterrestrials. Time travel is real. Time anomalies are real. The paranormal's real. Ghosts are real. Hauntings are real. All of these things are real. But when you have someone come out and tell untruths, make up stories, make up scenarios, make up narratives about it, and they take people down a rabbit hole, it makes a mockery of the actual truth. And that way, people who are actually seeking the truth, which I think is a very important thing to do, people who are seeking the truth will never get it. They are sent in the wrong direction. And that is exactly what Fiona Broome did with the Mandela Effect. And by extension, everyone who became attracted to her Mandela Effect, which is really my hijacked the time shift effect. Everyone who is attracted to it, and believe me, it's a fascinating topic. Of course, I am the leading expert in it in the world, so I should know. I want people attracted to the Mandela Effect to stop using the term Mandela Effect and call it by its real name. It's a time shift effect. And in particular, Nelson Mandela is a time shift living dead person. That's what I've always called it. I'm the person who publicly announced that Nelson Mandela was a time shift living dead person. Me. And just in case anyone's wondering, Art Bell was on my research list And he was very aware of my discussions on that research list and on various publications which I wrote, lectures which I did, that I talked about Nelson Mandela as a time shift living dead person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I heard you on Coast to Coast first. I think that's how I
Right.
first became aware of you and became interested in the topic myself, actually.
Right. That was, I was with Art Bell in 2009. I'd been on Coast to Coast before that too, with other hosts. Right. And other shows too. Whitley Strieber's Unknown Country and a host of other shows, including I was the chief science writer for Quest magazine, in which I discussed these topics way back in the 90s too. Anyway, well established. Fiona Broome, and I have to mention her name because she started the Mandela Effect in 2010, actually just a very short while after I appeared on Coast to Coast with Art Bell, where this topic was discussed. And I was shocked. I was shocked when I read about the Mandela Effect. It's not that I mind people talking about my discoveries. It's just that this woman completely left me out of the conversation.
Yeah, and a lot of people on the circuit, so-called truthers and givers of information, are plagiarizers too. I mean, they are acting in acts of theft of intellectual copyright of others, and people need to be aware of this. It's okay to look at other people's research, but you need to cite them as the author or the origin point of the research. You can't claim it as your own.
Exactly. I want people to be talking about this. I don't mind how many websites and how many podcasts are about the time shift effect and about my work. I encourage it because it's the most fascinating thing on the face of the planet. But what Fiona Broome did was to remove me from the conversation and pretend that there was no science, no understood science behind the time shift living dead phenomenon that she calls the Mandela Effect.
Yeah.
But there is
her website
a science.
Was asking people to write in their experiences of Mandela Effect as if it was gathering the data. Is that correct?
That's correct. She was soliciting people to try to figure out what's going on. What is it? How does it work? And she put herself at the center, in the spotlight, as the person who, started this whole phenomenon when she wasn't. I mean, she even wrote on her Mandela Effect website that she wanted to know what it was all about. She was actively researching it. And she was hoping that maybe she could write a book or do a film or, she was the center of attention. Well, I think it's very obvious that when you remove the actual person who discovered the phenomenon and the science behind it, that if you remove them, then you get to play the game of being the most important person in the room when it comes to this topic, which is what Fiona Broome was doing.
Yeah.
Now, I did want to give her the benefit of the doubt. I like to do that with people. I'm a fair person. I wanted to be fair. I thought, well, could this be a coincidence? I didn't think it was. I read things on her website which informed me that she knew exactly who I was. She was using some of my own words that I coined, using my own words, reality shift, time shift, when describing the Mandela Effect. You just don't come up with those out of thin air. She also started this, like I said, shortly after I was on Coast to Coast with Art Bell, and that Art Bell himself got the Mandela Effect, the time shift effect, the time shift living dead, the whole Nelson Mandela thing from me. Okay. So I decided to put Ms. Broome to the test. I discussed this with a few friends of mine. My name was not mentioned at all, and none of my buzzwords were mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those comments remained in the comments section. Then a little while later, maybe a week or so, I don't recall, a week or so goes by. And this time, my friend said in various ways, "Hey, have you ever heard of Starfire Tor? She was the one who first talked about Nelson Mandela. She's got the whole science worked out. Here's her website. Here's her Facebook page. Here is her appearances on this show, that show, this show, that show. Gee, you should really check it out because, you know, she's the origin of it."
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, Karen, those comments were disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Not one single one of the comments in which my name was mentioned was left for the public to see. That told me, that confirmed what I already knew, which was she didn't want anyone to know about me because it would spoil the fact that she had hijacked my work, my life's legacy, and she was holding back from the public the actual science behind it. And I want people to know what it is and how it works. I have spent a lifetime educating the world that we live in a reality that is not the reality that mainstream is pushing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't live in a single timeline. We live in multiple coexisting timelines. And I think that's what you discovered too when you first came upon me.
Yeah, well, you know, as you were talking about what happened in the past, it kind of triggered some of my own memories, actually, of having listened to you on Coast to Coast, talking about this information, and then seeing on the internet suddenly this thing spring up about the Mandela Effect. And I may have even, without knowing you at the time, gone on that message board and said, "Oh, but Starfire Tor has answered all these questions. They're called timeline edits." And I even remember myself thinking, hang on a minute, that woman I heard on Coast to Coast, she already explained all of this. And I already could remember hearing you talk about it, that drew me even into the topic. And I was like, oh, that all made sense. When you explained it, it all just made total sense to me because my brain is always in that beyond normal side of things. And I remember it quite clearly myself. And then what happened was they started to talk about the Mandela Effect as if no one knew what it was about. And I got a little bit confused myself, like cognitive dissonance. And then I watched many videos of people with their theories and even people quite well-known in YouTube land. Cliff High, he was saying he believes it's quantum computers were turned on, creating some quantum entanglement. And it's just like the theories were getting more and more, out there, and everyone had some bizarre theory. I just kept thinking, but I remember that lady Starfire Tor, she'd already explained it all and it all made sense. And she had all the proof and the research. I'm not even sure why people are still discussing this topic. But then I guess people just haven't really heard this story, which is why we wanted to do this as episode number 1, to just really bring this out there so we can just get that truth across. Because when you don't know truth, then you can be misled.
Right. And so what I want to discuss now is the actual science that,
please,
that makes the time shift living dead, that makes time shift effects and time shift markers so important in our world. And I want, whether someone is attracted to the Mandela effect, like I said, please stop using that term. Rebel. It's called the time shift living dead. Please honor the truth. Please honor my life's work and legacy. I'd appreciate it. I want you to be attracted to the real material. As I said, there are numerous co-existing timelines. We do not live in a singular timeline that has a past, a present, and a future. That's just man-made, constructed. Nor are there parallel timelines and there are no parallel universes or parallel dimensions. That was a theory put out by a lot of scientists and science fiction writers that was pretty good in its day. It got people to thinking about the topic. But when I discovered something called time shifts and the core matrix, as I did my research on the science of how it all worked, I discovered that there are no parallel timelines, meaning that a parallel timeline means it runs side by side.
Mm-hmm. So what's the difference between that and a coexisting one?
Right. Coexisting means every single timeline exists in the same space.
Right.
And is only separated by their individual frequencies. That's it. Think of the old-fashioned radios. You had a dial, and depending on what radio station you wanted to hear, you'd change the dial. There were radio crystals who could pick up the individual tuners or frequencies of the radio station. So you would have a singular box or a singular device called a radio, and you would just turn that dial to pull in whichever station you wanted. Yet every single radio station was still broadcasting. The music or the talk shows were still out there broadcasting. They were still streaming. But you could only tune into one per device. That's how timelines work. They are streamed from something called the core matrix. The core matrix is, the analogy of it is, it's like a cosmic hard drive. It's not a sentient being. It's not a machine. It's not generating holograms. The core matrix exists in the ergosphere that surrounds a particular humongous black hole complex that our worlds are tied to. And our original universe was taken in by this huge black hole complex. It's part of nature. It's not an unusual phenomenon. It's a normal phenomenon. When this happens and there's a rotating ergosphere around this type of a black hole, it can capture remnants, fragments, pieces of whatever it's pulling in: planets, nebulas, solar systems, us. So remnants, particles of our universe were rescued from the black hole before it went into the black hole. It was captured into this ergosphere, and from this, over time, millions of years, the core matrix was formed in order to reproduce, resurrect the original universe. That's a part of nature. This is how universes, planets, solar systems, nebulas, stardust, this is how it's all created. This is part of creation. This is how it works.
I believe even in some religious beliefs, like if you look in the Hindu text, they talk about the cosmic in and out breath of Brahma, as if there's this pushing out of creation, then a sucking back in, and then a spewing forth again, as it's like an in and out breath.
The Hindu have some remarkable information, remembrances of the before time. So over time, because of this manifest, what I call the prime directive, the core matrix began to find a way to resurrect the original universe, because it is a life force. You have dark matter, which holds all of life force together. It's called dark, not because it's evil, but because human beings do not have any tools that can visually see the element of dark matter, the element of matter that holds everything together. So they call it dark, but that's just a phrase. So the spark of life is there, and the spark of life induces the need to become life, to be life, to excel, to evolve. And so the core matrix began again. and began to recreate us into our original form. However, because the core matrix only had remnants of our previous cosmic universe, it only had remnants to work with to resurrect us. And so it did the very best that it could, but it kept doing an editing process, which it does to this very day, trying to figure out how to fix what it considers a glitch, a problem, because it can never, ever, never, ever resurrect us fully, because it needs the entirety of the spark of life from the original universe that we came from in order to do that. With remnants, that's all you have to do with. It was doing its best. So it is keyed to, programmed to continue to do this work until it gets it right, something it can never do. And so, because of this, it engages in something that I call time shifts, timeline edits. We are in continuous timeline edits. Think of yourself as a writer. You're writing a book, you're writing a report, you're writing anything you can think of, a letter, and you want to change some things inside of that document. You want to keep some things, change some things to make it better. You edit it out. Maybe you have a couple of different versions of the same script. And so you copy paste a little bit from this one. You copy it, paste it into your product. You copy from another source, paste it into your product. Well, that product is life. And the ability to copy and paste does not reduce its origin source. It's an exact replica. Well, when the core matrix does this timeline editing, it then creates a new dominant timeline. Every single past coexisting timeline is still streaming. Like those radio broadcasts are still playing. They're still streaming out there. These coexisting timelines still exist. We'll never go back to them, but they're still there, always there. But the core matrix has a program that I call brain assimilation. And that is anytime it does one of these timeline deals, it makes sure that our brains are only aware of the dominant timeline that we happen to exist in now. It's a whole group planetary thing. And I'm just talking about Earth right now because that's where we live. But this is an entire universe project. If there's a timeline edit, it's not just happening on the planet, it's happening in the entire cosmos that the core matrix resurrected. I just want everyone to know that.
That's an important point.
It is. But right now we're just talking about planet Earth because that's where our awareness is.
And can I just ask you, did coexisting timelines exist within your theory before the creation went into the black hole to be rebirthed and the glitch? Was it one singular timeline and then they all cascaded out of that due to the glitch and the core matrix was created then? Or do you think there was already coexisting timelines at that point?
That's a great question. Now, here is where I can only talk about theory. Everything that I've just talked about is actual science because I've done the research on it for years and I am able to replicate it. The thing about science is if you're able to reproduce your experiment and you get the same end product, you have discovered an actual science. And that's what I'm talking about. But with the question that you asked, this is a theory. I do not know the answer, but let me tell you what I believe. based on my research, I believe right now that the original universe was a singular timeline. There was no need for the editing process.
Mm-hmm.
We were involved in a completely other lifestyle, way of being, consciousness.
And this story echoes through many religions an idea of being this Edenic, perfect state of being that somehow we left.
Right. And the only reason why we have, again, theory, the only reason why we have this editing is, as I explained, the core matrix continues to try to make us whole, and that's not possible. This not being whole is also why human beings don't come with a blueprint. They don't come with a, where do we come from? The answer is not there. This is why we're constantly searching for all of these answers and mostly not getting it right. But like you said, every once in a while you find some ancient saga, some ancient epic, some tale, some myth, even some religions have pieces of it right, but none of them exactly the way that I'm describing it now. So, Karen, while I'm saying that what I just explained is theory, I could be wrong about whether there was just a singular timeline. I'm always willing to be wrong. I'm always willing to improve my knowledge. But over the many years that I've been doing this so far, I have found nothing that diminishes the facts that I have.
Well, just intuitively, the idea of a sort of creation bursting forth from a singular point, a singularity of perfection, sort of outward and cascading like streamers as it becomes vast in number, and then to sort of then close back perhaps towards a singularity again. Just in my intuitive mind, that kind of makes sense as a model. I don't know why. To me, that makes sense. A feeling of the alpha and omega.
Yeah.
The beginning and the end, and then everything in between is kind of us living this crazy life. And then perhaps it goes back to the singularity, and then perhaps the process would start, over again, perhaps with different dimensions like a fractal.
Yeah. Well, I'd be very careful talking about singularities right now. Because,
true.
Because that's a whole other topic there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, just a singular point, time, space.
I understand.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that in quantum physics, singularity has a meaning, and I just don't want to go into that right now. Okay. So now back to the time shift living dead, back to Nelson Mandela and a whole host of others. When there is a timeline edit, that means that events within that current timeline, what was then the dominant timeline, are altered. They're altered so the core matrix can do what it believes might get us closer to our original selves. And that means that when the editing is done, a new coexisting timeline, a dominant one, I call it dominant. The dominant one is where all of our consciousness is focused. People don't go into their own little coexisting timelines. You don't jump timelines at will. That's just something that people made up to get, I call it clickbait nonsense. So let's say you're in the previous coexisting timeline and Nelson Mandela died. Then you have a timeline edit. And because of events, which are like a domino effect, you move a grain of sand on a beach and the other side of the world, you've just built a mountain. It's very much like that. It's not that the core matrix focuses on people and says, oh, I'm going to bring that person back or I'm going to make that person dead. It doesn't work that way. The core matrix is not sentient, does not think about us in that way. So when the new timeline is reconstructed, Nelson Mandela happened to be alive again. I utilize when I'm teaching about the time shift living dead, I utilize well-known people, celebrity. Time shift living dead happens to absolutely everyone, no matter who you are, where you are, any life form, trees, animals, people, fish, it doesn't matter. It happens to everything. Also, part of the time shift effect is, I talk about this a lot. I write about this a lot. You can have traveled down a street that you know very well, hundreds, thousands of times. You know it so well. Suddenly one day, there's an odd house on the street that had never been there before. You know, it had never been there before. Not only had it not been there before, it looked very, very odd. And when you, let's say you had the courage to knock on the door and you say, did you just build this? When did this house come? And they go, I've been living here for 12 years. But your memory says no. You have a very distinct memory that says that house was not there. It's the same thing with whether time shift living dead people are alive or they're dead. I call this dual coexisting timeline memory conflict.
And do you think a little bit linked to people's sense of deja vu that they get, where they feel like they've lived something before?
Absolutely.
This is also answering that phenomena.
It does.
Yeah.
So when a person has a dual coexisting timeline memory conflict, like with Nelson Mandela, they remember him as having died, and they remember him as being alive. Both of these memories are correct. Okay. And this is where the mind-blowing part of the whole thing comes in. That's the science. That's how it works. It works on all of these things that are this way when there are authentic changes. Now, I go through a very strict criteria when I'm investigating reports of a time shift living dead person. First of all, years and years ago, I created portals through which people from all over the world could contact me privately to report. I did not come out and confirm that Nelson Mandela was a time shift living dead person until I had received thousands of reports from all over the world. Okay. This day of social media and social platforms, I have to watch out for fake celebrity death reports. They're out there, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes people do it as a prank even, don't they? That is a prank. Yeah, they do these silly prank website news stories.
Right. And so people can believe that somebody was dead and then they see him alive again and they think it's a time shift living dead because they believed the hoax.
Yeah.
So that's something I have to research. Also, people can have false positive memories. Mm-hmm. They can hear about someone else having the Nelson Mandela experience and they can believe that they've had it too, when in fact they haven't. So the only authentic Nelson Mandela time shift living dead reports that I can say are authentic are the ones that I received, the thousands that I received before I went public with it. And most definitely before Art Bell, started talking about stuff and definitely before Fiona Broome. Now, I have to tell you that a couple of years ago, I did write a report about what Fiona Broome did, the hijacking of my time shift living dead work. It was time. It was about time that I did this. And there's something very important that I need everyone to know. When I first came out with the Nelson Mandela time shift living dead information, I was very, very concerned that once I did this, once I laid it out, I would now not be able to use anyone's reports because I was contaminating the field.
Yeah.
And also, just as an aside to complete a thought I had a few minutes ago, the reason why I only talk about celebrities publicly is because, well, millions of people, thousands to millions of people know who celebrities are. So the chance of more people recognizing that they've encountered a timeshift living dead person and being able to document that becomes possible. But a private person that only a few people know, that's impossible for me to document with the public. So that's the only reason that I always talk about celebrities. Okay, back to this very important information that I need to share. Okay. So, as I said, when I first came out with the information, I was very concerned that I was now contaminating the field, that there would never be an authentic Nelson Mandela report again. Even if people were telling the truth, I could not use it as part of my criteria, but it was okay because I had already confirmed it. So what I did was I added a piece of false information into what I was sharing with the public. I'd never done that before. I've not done it since. But I knew that if I added a red herring, some information in the story, if I heard people repeating that false information as part of their memory, then I knew that they were not an authentic rememberer of an actual time shift living dead event. They were attracted to it. Now, it's not that they were lying. I'm not accusing them of lying. It's just that it would be a false memory.
People can be slightly suggestible at times. It can be a little bit suggestible. And I'd like to add that when I heard about the Mandela Effect memories, I really didn't have any memory of Mandela dying in prison or anything like that. I seem to remember, now I was quite young back then, that he got out of prison and was released and was praised.
Before I reveal what the false information was, which I know is going to shock a lot of people, but whether somebody remembers a time shift living dead event or any other type of timeline editing, it has nothing to do with intelligence. It has nothing to do with IQ. It has nothing to do with how psychic you are, how aware that you are. It's just that it just happens to be what your brain happened to access and remember. It is a glitch, not necessarily saying that you're better than anybody else. Please, I have to make that very, very clear.
No, okay? And there's plenty of glitches that some people will experience and others won't have any experience of.
That's exactly how it works, Karen. Okay, so here is the shocker. The false information that I fed into the narrative is that Nelson Mandela died in prison.
Okay.
I lied. And the reason that I chose that, it was twofold. Number one, of all of the thousands of reports that I received, not one single one of them said that he died in prison. Okay. And the majority of them told me exactly where he died. And I will tell you, and Karen, I will tell you this too, it was after he got out of prison.
Yeah, that's how I remember.
He died after. So he is a timeline living dead, a time shift living dead person. But when he died before, that everyone seems to think they remember, he did not die in prison. Now, I will also tell you that when Fiona Broome, the woman who hijacked my work, she wrote that her memory of Nelson Mandela was that he had died in prison. Even Art Bell talked about that because he picked it up from me. So I knew that I was able to trace all of that he died in prison back to Art Bell and or Fiona Broome. And so from there, it took off.
Yeah.
It's false. And that's another reason why I was able to determine that Fiona Broome was just playing into a game that she had created, a scam that she had created to be the center of attention, maybe a way to get this attention and make some money. Sorry, it's over. Okay? So now that everybody knows how the time shift living dead works, what the science is and how it works, Karen, is there anything else about this you want to know before we move on to other people who are time shift living dead?
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear more about that. My earliest memory of the Mandela effect truly is the mirror, mirror on the wall statement in Snow White, the Disney movie. And, this is a very well-known saying. It's what really piqued my interest. I'd heard you talking about time shifts, and then I'd heard someone mention about, oh, have you seen Snow White, the movie? The words have changed, the iconic words. I mean, you can't get a more famous statement, can you, than mirror, mirror on the wall. Anyone you ask will tell you that sentence. But now it's changed to magic mirror on the wall. And I just wanted to ask you, is this one that you consider to be an authentic one? Did you notice that? Was this brought to your attention? Because it's a particular favorite of mine that drew me into the topic personally.
Okay. Let me first say a blanket statement. Just because the Mandela effect is a scam only because it was hijacked from my work. The phenomenon is real.
Yeah.
But it's called the time shift effect.
The time shift effect.
The time shift effect. People, please throw away the Mandela effect. It's an insult. Okay. When you use the Mandela effect, that says you don't really know the truth. You don't know the science. And I want you to know it. I gave it to you. So, yes, that one's real. Magic mirror on the wall, mirror, mirror on the wall. It's true. Yet, there's another one. Sex in the City, Sex and the City. There's a perfume brand, a bottle that was put out by the Sex in the City, Sex and the City people. It's Sex and the City is the name of the show. Now, because I've been doing research on these various time anomalies like this, I know how to research it. So it didn't take me more than a couple of minutes to solve what had flustered the Mandela effect community for a long time. I mean, it's very good that people point out these oddities, but when you don't know the science, you don't really know how to do the research, and you don't really know how to talk about it. Because when you know the science, as I've explained it, then, man, that really creates your brain to just grow and grow and grow. It's just mind blowing.
I agree. Because otherwise you're just going round and round in circles, looking at effects of the phenomena, but not understanding the phenomena, which is kind of pointless. It's just entertainment then. It's just like, oh, look, there's that weird thing. And some people delve really into delusional ideas, like it's the devil playing tricks on me or it's demons. So to know the actual science behind it, you've got to know it, and then you can take that knowledge further.
Right. It's also made a mockery of the actual phenomenon, which is a very important core matrix glitch that helped me to discover time shifts, the coexisting timelines, that our reality is not what mainstream tells you it is. It's very different. So when it comes to Sex and the City, they had a perfume product called Sex and the City. Then some other people found a nearly identical product called Sex in the City. Looks almost the same, but the word and in were inverted. And they said, well, this must be part of the Mandela effect. People, no. This again is, if you knew how things worked, you would be able to do the research better. What it turns out to be, and I said it took me just a couple of minutes to find out, in this world, there are knockoff products. And Sex in the City happens to be one of those knockoff products. It's not a time shift effect. It is just a knockoff product calling itself Sex in the City to try to legally get out of the fact they are obviously trying to take business away from the authentic Sex and the City product. Okay? So there is that one.
But the point of the time shift effect is not to like change up your reality and freak you out a bit. It's just a side effect of the shifting of the timelines, isn't it?
Well, these are time shift markers.
The markers. Could you explain that a little bit, perhaps?
When you experience something like a time shift living dead, where you have this dual coexisting timeline memory conflict, where your brain goes, but this person was dead and now this person's alive, or this person was alive, dead, now alive again. I mean, it can happen multiple times. Or that building has changed. It wasn't there yesterday. It wasn't there 2 minutes ago. Or wait, the color of my favorite shirt just changed. I know it did, but your husband or your wife says, no, honey, it's always been that color. But you know for sure it's your favorite shirt. These are glitches.
Mm-hmm.
The brain assimilation that the core matrix engages in does not want the human brain to have the burden of trying to carry the memories of every single timeline edit in what could be millions to billions of timeline edits. So we are reduced to thinking that we live in this one timeline world. But when your brain remembers little bits and fragments from these previous coexisting timelines, you're not going crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. That has actually happened. So you have to keep the memory of that timeline separate from what's happening here. And again, it's a clue to the fact that our reality is ever being changed by the core matrix.
So we have these markers that people notice, these events that are the symbols that the timeline has been edited. And that's really the exciting story, isn't it, Starfire? And this I'd like to bring back to experiences you've had with the living, dead people and animals and such that I know you've documented and researched.
Right. You've brought up the absolutely most important thing about my discovery of the time shift living dead. And that is that the time shift living dead is not the main event. It's why we have time shift living dead.
Mm-hmm.
What has been edited? Why has it been edited? What has happened that has triggered the core matrix or the core matrix prime directive to make these edits? What specifically? Because that has been a great deal of my research has gone into trying to figure out what it was. And one of the big things that I did discover was the major type of a timeline edit that we can get is called a timeline reboot.
Mm-hmm.
When a reboot happens, that means that the planet itself has been destroyed again. And instead of just having the core matrix do a timeline editing, which is not possible when your planet has been completely destroyed or the universe is destroyed, either way, we have to be rebooted. We have to be literally resurrected. So there is an event which I was able to track down through my diligent research. And that is thousands upon thousands of years ago. There was what was akin to a nuclear holocaust, a war between factions. In fact, extraterrestrials, just as is written in the Sumerian clay tablets. And our planet was destroyed, gone. That means all life, the planet, everything. And the core matrix resurrected us. I don't know how long it takes. That's the one thing. I have no idea how long such a thing takes. No one does, really. But one thing is for sure. This terrible planet-ending event continues to time loop through every single timeline edit. And what that means is energy. Everything is energy, but energy itself cannot be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
It can be transformed, and it can be transferred in part of its transformation. Water can turn to steam. That's the best example of how energy can be transmuted from one form to another.
Can I just ask you here, would you say then that this ancient battle that to some may not seem that ancient, within our sphere of history, would that have been the start of this time looping disaster loop that we're in now? Is that what you're saying here?
Right. This is a particular
origin point.
Right. This is an origin point. It's not the origin of us.
No.
This is not the original universe, because that was a black hole disaster. But
this particular time looping event that we find ourselves trying to avert
is the absolutely most important event that we have been dealing with for thousands of years. Nothing else compares to the total destruction of the planet. That means everyone dies.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? That means that everybody is a time shift living dead person.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone.
Yay.
People often ask me, well, what does it feel like to be a time shift living dead person? I just turn and say, well, you tell me, because you're one. If you're alive today, you are a time shift living dead person. Now,
we should make T-shirts with that on. Sorry, I'm a time shift living dead person. There you go. Merch ideas.
There you go. So this time looping, planet ending nuclear disaster continues to be triggered because, as I said, energy cannot be destroyed. And every time the core matrix does a timeline edit and creates a new dominant coexisting timeline, it has to use all of the energy, all of the elements that it has to restructure it, which means that destructive nuclear type disaster has to come back into the timeline. Well, if the core matrix does that, we just get destroyed automatically again. So it knows how to spread out the energy on the planet so that it's a lesser destruction. For example, many, many hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, even violence, wars, all of these things can be a part of the energy reduced so that it won't destroy us. It's destructive, but it doesn't destroy the planet.
It would make sense then that we're starting to notice this strange phenomena growing in recent years as we develop those more advanced technologies that take us back to that point of being even able to repeat that cycle.
Well, what I've noticed is the more that I've been teaching people about this in the world, the more that they are aware of these time shift markers, the more of these time shift markers appear. Mm-hmm. Not because there's more of them, but because more people are aware of them. It's in their brain. Anyway, so in these days, we have certain bad actors who continuously create nuclear disasters that lead to a time looping, planet ending nuclear disaster. And it happens again and again and again in modern times. And every time it's happened, we get a timeline reboot. We just had one a couple of weeks before we were doing this show. And we come back. We have the ability to be aware of this time looping disaster. I've made the world aware of it. I'm making more of the world aware of it through this show. Mm-hmm. And we can actually stop it. We can diminish it and push it down so that we never have to worry about it again. I think we'll talk about it more at length in a future show, perhaps.
Yes. This is only episode 1, so subscribe and stay tuned, folks.
Right, exactly.
For future episodes.
A future episode. What I would like to do is I would like to talk about more time shift living dead people and animals.
Yes, because it's so fascinating. It really is.
Exactly. And again, I'm just talking about the well-known people. I used to have a list of the time shift living dead on my website. And then I noticed that people were taking that information and not giving me credit. Surprise, surprise. And so I removed the information. But on this show, you're going to see a brief list of many, many time shift living dead people.
Confirmed.
All confirmed. I would never put one out. I would never call them time shift living dead unless that person had been confirmed by me. Okay. So the first one after Nelson Mandela that I want to talk about is Ruby, the African elephant. This is very interesting because, as I explained, in the science of the time shift living dead, any life form, any object can come and go depending on how the timeline edit works and whether or not the brain, which is the interface to the core matrix, which is how it all works, is how we pick up streaming coexisting timelines. Our brain, if we remember these dual memory conflicts, if we have them, it's of a living creature, some living essence. We're human, so we're limited in what we're aware of that's alive. Some people can see spirits, some people can see ghosts, some people angels, some people higher beings, and some people not so much. So Ruby, the African elephant, not to be confused with Ruby, the Asian elephant, not the same elephants. Ruby seems to be a popular name for elephants for some reason. Okay, so Ruby, the African pachyderm, lived in its in part of its life at the Los Angeles Zoo.
Right.
Ruby was an older gal, and she wasn't doing that well. And a deal was finally made to move her to a sanctuary. Happy day. Well, Ruby was put into the crate, and somewhere along the way, she died in that crate. It was terrible. Made the news. It was just, everybody pointing fingers at everybody else.
Yeah.
Then we have, years later, a timeline edit happens, and voila, Ruby's back. Ruby, the African elephant, is back. She got in that crate. She made it to her sanctuary, and she lived there for many years, and then she died.
I've got to admit, I kind of prefer that ending.
I do too. But we all have experienced the time shift living dead ending because of the timeline reboots and the time looping, planet ending nuclear holocaust. So some of you listening to this are going to remember Ruby, particularly if you're into saving animals, if you're an animal person. If you lived in California or Los Angeles, you're definitely going to potentially have some memory at least of Ruby the elephant, the African elephant. So there's an example of a famous elephant who's a time shift living dead. Another really, really well-known one, and this is the one that I would talk about the most after Nelson Mandela, and this is the actor, comedian, producer, Bob Hope.
Yeah.
Bob Hope is a time shift living dead person. He lived to be, 100 years old, maybe more. Don't quote me on that, but at least 100. And his first remembered death happened. He was so well loved. He did a lot of work for the USO and for the Gov. He was a real patriot. So when he died the first time, his death was announced in Congress, in the U.S. Congress.
Wow.
Uh-oh. Then we have a time shift. Then we have a timeline edit. And the announcement is made in Congress still because the dual memory conflict is very much alive. What the core matrix does is once it does a timeline edit, if there are discrepancies, it backfills the the new storyline of our life. It backfills enough of it so that if people go looking, you're not going to find that Bob Hope died before. But what got left over is that, and this information is still available, that his death was announced in Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Bob Hope's friends who knew he was still alive, called him so that he was able to actually watch a rerun of his death being announced in Congress. But here's what happened. He did die. There was a memory, shadow of that memory still lingered, a piece of that previous coexisting timeline bled through and still lingered in the new dominant coexisting timeline.
Yeah.
So that you have people remembering that he died and people remembering that he was alive at the same time, dual memory conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, after the fact, people pointing fingers at, this mistake was made and that mistake was made and this congressman shouldn't have done this and shouldn't have done that. No. All of that is just trying to make coping excuses for the fact that this was a verified time shift living dead event. It's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. And there are the bleed throughs, aren't there? Like you say, if you know what to look for, it was like, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show about the mirror, mirror on the wall, that still exists heavily throughout society. You still see it quoted everywhere.
There is unlimited number of these glitches are left in the world. It's amazing, but true. Oh, I also want to explain one thing. I just want to go back for just one little moment. I discovered the science of why people sometimes believe that somebody has died and suddenly they're alive again, or the reverse.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be called the alive again, dead again phenomenon. That existed already. What I did was I discovered the science of how it worked, and then I named it. So I should have mentioned this in the beginning. It slipped my mind, but I do want everyone to know that the alive again, dead again phenomenon has been around as long as humans have been around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And as long as there's been some sort of communication media.
And in every country, not just USA.
Oh, everywhere. The whole world.
You're just speaking personally from things you remember, but I'm sure in China, Russia,
everywhere.
Far-flung places.
Everywhere.
That's it. And I find it fascinating that you say it can also be like universal. That
it is universal. It's cosmic. Human beings, neither human beings nor advanced entities, nor angels, nor any entity, whether singularly or in a group, and that includes humans, no one can create or manipulate a time shift. No one can create or manipulate a timeline edit. Only the core matrix can do timeline edits, and we get most of our time shift activity from solar energy, whether it's a coronal mass ejection or a solar wind or something like that, hitting the magnetic shield around our planet creates a warping in the space-time continuum. The core matrix takes advantage of that, and that's where the timeline editing comes into. In fact, Einstein predicted that this space-time warping occurred, and NASA actually was able to prove it by the use of the positioning of certain spacecraft in space. They were able to prove it a few years ago. I love it when science catches up with my discoveries. It's really wonderful.
Yep.
Okay. So it's very important that everyone understand that no human being, no creature, no spirit, no force can create a time shift other than these natural processes, and no one can do a timeline edit other than the core matrix. I know that there are people out there who have loads of theories and, as I mentioned before, talking about jumping timelines. No, not at all. However, there is something called a reality shift manifestation. And this is also something that I discovered the science behind, and I named reality shift manifestation. It's something that humans can do naturally. Even though humans cannot jump timelines, or jump coexisting timelines, they cannot do timeline edits. Humans are capable of doing alterations in their localized coexisting timelines. I use them all the time. I teach it. Karen and I have been utilizing it in a number of groups that are right now on Facebook to create rain in Australia, create rain in the Amazon. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was great fun. And,
Yep.
and people can come and join our mission groups on Facebook. If you look up in the show notes, you'll see some links. Do come and find us and join the missions that we're doing. And you'll learn these techniques. You'll learn that Starfire is going to be teaching these techniques in Operation Warriors of Light. So get yourself
Operation
over there.
Warriors of Light. Very, very, very important. Please join that. We will be using reality shift manifestation side protocols for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it is possible with certain rules for either a singular human or a group of them to make alterations in the localized timeline. What you cannot do with a reality shift manifestation is make somebody think a certain way. You can't do mind control or brainwashing. You can't force somebody to do something. What you can do is you can create the circumstances by which you can give a person the truth and the free will to make the best choices that they can make.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit more detailed than that. A little bit more than that can be done. But I just wanted everyone to know that.
It's like kind of triggering the people call it the optimum timeline. It's like kind of trying to trigger the optimum, what comes next, really, isn't it?
Right. For example, if somebody wanted to use a reality shift manifestation to heal someone, very possible.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody wanted to use a reality shift manifestation to say, I want a yacht,
mm-hmm.
but there's nothing in that person's lifetimes that says they're going to have a yacht, they deserve a yacht, they work for a yacht, they're going to be gifted with a yacht. So reality shift manifestation is not going to manifest a yacht for them. It might manifest a toy yacht from a toy store, but that's about it. There are limits. You have to know those rules. And that's what I teach.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you and I, Karen, have been working with, and we will be working with in Operation Warriors of Light, in which we are going to create a very powerful but peaceful change on this planet to switch out the negative, corrupt balance of power to something more friendly, useful, safe, and secure with this planet.
Yes,
and you have
which is important.
Right. You have to join that group in order to learn what it is and to be part of it. So we hope that people will as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I've covered the fact that there are no timeline jumps. You can't create your own reality in that you go to your own timeline. You can potentially alter some of the localized factors in your own timeline if those factors already exist in other coexisting timelines, and you can copy paste it in. I teach about this, but there are rules. So just learn it from me. Don't go to people who are just taking you for a ride. Just learn it from me.
Spewing nonsense. Go to the horse's mouth. The source. Go to the source.
The source. Yeah. Okay. So now another timeline, time shift living dead person is Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
A number of years ago, she was almost assassinated, depending on which timeline you remember. And so were some people who were in the group listening to her talk. It was some sort of a community gathering.
It was terrible. I remember.
It was terrible. And what happened is she was shot in the head. And today, although she survived, she did have very serious brain damage. She's also married to an astronaut named Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is some of the news media reported that she had died.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like the way Bob Hope was announced in Congress. And even her husband, who was interviewed, did say on some shows she had died. I have this. I still actually have this evidence.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always easy to maintain this evidence. It can also be disappeared. But for some reason, sometimes the evidence remains.
It's all about those screen captures.
I have screen captures. I have video captures. I have them.
Yes, you have to. You have to grab the evidence and keep it in a folder.
You bet.
Yeah.
So shortly after that, she was alive, which is, of course, lovely.
Yeah, I kind of remember that. Like, she was somehow survived a terrible attempt on her life. That's how I remember it.
Right. She is a time shift living dead person. She was announced as having died, legitimately announced.
Mm-hmm.
And then within a day, seemingly to our point of view, our consciousness, she was alive. She survived an unsurvivable wound to her head.
So can I just ask at this point, does that mean that at that point where she was dying, there was just another timeline edit that was occurring at that point that she somehow got brought back just coincidentally? Or is it was editing her back into the timeline for some crucial reason?
She became edited back into the timeline. It didn't necessarily, the time shift didn't necessarily happen at the point where she and the others were shot.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that event was slightly altered when the editing happened to the timeline and the new dominant timeline came online.
So we still have no idea that the space of time when a copy paste is going on and like the amount of overlay that happens with the timelines so that we continue the continuum.
I have some ideas sometimes because I have so much research into this and experiences. I am an experiencer too.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll hold that for another day because it's quite extensive.
Mm-hmm.
The point is, this is a fantastic topic because it's not just about time shift living dead. It's about the event that caused it. What in our world was changed? Why was it changed?
Mm-hmm.
How do we find out what was changed? Well, if you can figure out enough of the time shift markers, you can add up events that have changed, topography that has changed. You can even get into an argument with a friend or a spouse because they remember one thing one way and you remember it another. And it could very well be that one of you isn't remembering quite right, or both of you remember exactly what happened, but one of you remembers a coexisting timeline from the past, and one of you remembers one from the current dominant timeline. That happens all the time.
Kind of saving marriages here too, then, with this info.
I'm saving relationships. Absolutely. No, it's true. I'm saving relationships because if any of you do have that kind of an argument, stop. Think about it. Now, how are you going to know? Look for other timeline edits. I talk about them, I list them, I teach them.
But can I just say the timeline edits are occurring to keep us on a positive timeline that isn't guiding us towards the mega reboot type scenario. Is that correct?
That's what it tries to do.
So it's just trying to make the timeline more optimum so we're not always just destroying ourselves. So the smaller edits are just little things it does to preempt something that it foresees. Is that correct?
Correct.
The core matrix I'm talking about.
It's what I call the prime directive.
Yeah.
And that's to keep us alive, to keep us going so that we can one day, as best as possible, get back to who we were and where we were, which was our best possible us. And it wasn't our fault that we were sucked in by a black hole.
Sorry. Could that be a reason why sometimes you might have a world player, say some kind of leader or head of industry, someone that perhaps in the past, when you'd seen them on the TV, you didn't really vibe with them, you didn't really trust them that much, or you didn't particularly take to them or like them. And then maybe in the future you see them and they seem a little different and you see them in a new light. Could this be where the timeline edits might be trying to bring in the best possible version of that person into this timeline to then alter how it flows?
That has sometimes happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's not generally intentional. As I said, the core matrix cannot target a person to be edited. But the core matrix, if that person is involved with saving the planet,
mm-hmm.
if that person is involved with saving the planet, the core matrix can do timelines that find the best version of that person.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot create a new person. It cannot create the person of your dreams, but it can edit in the best versions of that and keep upgrading them, taking from past coexisting timelines. And then eventually core matrix will get to the best that person can be. And that person specifically is there to save the world, to save the planet.
But they're a crucial player.
Right. But you're going to find a lot of other players who are the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot make a bad person good.
No.
You cannot give a person common sense through this. You can't make them brainiacs. Certain things are set. But if somebody was a better version of themselves in a previous coexisting timeline, but right now, for some reason, they were not the best version of themselves, it's possible to do a timeline edit and copy paste the better version of them into it. You can't make them what they're not. You can help to make them their best person that they always were. That's how the core matrix works. And you and I know, Karen, that's been done recently.
Mm-hmm.
And but most of these vibes that you get of people you can't trust them.
Yeah, I get those vibes very strongly with people.
Yeah, a lot of people do. Right? But as you and I have discussed, and I think we're going to be doing a show on this about brainwashing, there is a concerted brainwashing program. Well, that's been going on since the dawn of time, but there's one that's currently been going on since 2015. And even before that has brainwashed people into thinking that people who are really friends of the planet are enemies of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
There's a power grab going on.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that reality shift manifestation can actually help with.
Yeah, and they also make you believe that people who aren't friends of the planet are friends of the planet.
Yes,
it works both ways. It works both ways.
Right. And this, it's a power grab.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using this brainwashing tool to trick, I call them tricksters, to trick people into thinking that the people that they need to put their belief in, their faith in, and help are the very people that they create fake narratives, fake personas that you should hate this person because they're this, they're that, they're all these hateful things, when in truth, they're not that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so easy to brainwash people. So we're going to get into that in another show, right?
Yes, we will definitely get into that topic.
Yes, very, very important because it's happening right now.
Yeah, it's so important.
And it's scary. I'm even concerned about what's going on in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
So again, people, please, the Mandela Effect is a hijacking and a corruption of my time shift effect, time shift living dead work. Please stop using the phrase the Mandela Effect. Please use the phrase time shift living dead and the time shift effect. Please use my name, Starfire Tor. Please learn the science that I've been teaching you today. And if you've been following me forever, and realize that this is not about things changing. This is about why it's changing.
Mm-hmm.
This is about learning everything that you can about these time shift markers, of which the mirror, mirror on the wall is about. and all the other changes that I talked about. These are the conversations I want everyone to be having.
Yeah.
The more people who can help me to make these time shift marker discoveries, the better chance we have of not only finding out all of the edits that the core matrix has been doing, but it will give us a heads up about what we can proactively do to make this world genuinely a better place, to make us genuinely better people.
Yep. Amen to that. You won't get any arguments here. So I'd just like to say thank you, Starfire, and bring it to an end now, the podcast.
And thank you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you so much for laying it out, unpacking that topic for us here, and really giving people the facts so they can go forward very well educated. And instead of being ignorant in the topic, they can now know the facts. And
Correct.
I do ask the people listening to this podcast to please go and check out the links and visit Starfire Tor's website and read her articles. If you're stuck on any of the terms, I know she has a lot of great articles on her website that will explain more to you, so you can go into the core matrix and read her articles about that.
Right. And most of all, please share this podcast all over social media. By sharing this podcast, not only are you telling me that you care about truth, you care about honesty, and you care about the real science of what's going on. You care about it. And the more of you that spread this word, that repost and share this podcast, the more people who see it, who know about it, the better our planet will be.
Because it's really about time for the truth. Now we want to put the truth back in the word truth and movement on this podcast, the Time Chronicles. We really want to help get that truth out there to arm people with real facts, because there's just so much disinformation and it really disempowers you as a person.
It just ruins the whole topic of anomalies. It ruins it. And it's a very real topic. Well, I want to take it out of the gutter, which is the Mandela effect, and I want to put it where it's supposed to be. With you, in your brains, in your heart, and in the world of real science. Thank you, Karen, for allowing me to do this, and I'm glad that we chose this as our first show.
Yes, and thank you so much, Starfire, for this amazing chat. And I will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We hope you enjoyed this remarkable journey into the Time Chronicles, changing the way you view reality.